All right, welcome everybody. This is the Redgate webinar, and we're going to be talking about the database lifecycle management today because we've been talking about the database lifecycle management. We're very excited about it. Get the next slide.
Yep. So it's me.
Yeah.
So I'm Steve Jones. I'm one of the two people here. I'll be doing kind of the demo, and I've been working with SQL Server since 1991. I've worked with, of all the versions since it was running on OS2 from Sybase. I've worked in big companies, small companies, a variety of different industries over my career, and so I've had a lot of experience as a developer in DBA. I currently work for Redgate as an evangelist. All of my contact information is up there, and I'm also the founder of SQL Server Central, and that's most of what I do is run SQL Server Central on a daily basis, as well as do some speaking for Redgate.
And my name is Grant Fritchey. I also work for Redgate Software as an evangelist. And my background is not that dissimilar from Steve's. I've mainly worked as a developer and then a lot of times as a DBA, and for really tiny little companies and giant enterprises, global, local, all kinds of fun stuff. And then, Redgate for the last few years. And I've been working with SQL Server since 6.0. Sybase 4.2, SQL Server 6.0, something like that.
Yeah,
a long time. I guess the best way to put it.
20 years.
So it's been an interesting trip, and I've really enjoyed it. I love the technology, and I love this topic. I love talking about database deployment methodologies because it can be such a nightmare to get this done. So it's fun to try to find better ways to make it happen.
All right, so here's really the intro, the agenda of what we're going to do. We talk a little bit about what this ALM, DLM database development, database deployment means, and then I hope to spend most of the time on a demo here and really show you some different things. I'm going to use some of the Redgate tools and show you how it works smoothly with all of our Redgate products. You could use, other tools. You could write your own tools to kind of follow this same process. But you'll spend time and money putting those together. We're hoping, in some sense, you'll just see that there's value in this whole process, and you'll choose Redgate tools. But if you don't choose Redgate tools, please still follow the whole process. So who's Redgate? Some of you are probably customers of ours. Some of you aren't. We are a company that builds tools for DBAs and developers. I like to tell people, we build software to help you build software and make your database applications work well. We focus primarily on SQL Server and SQL Server applications or applications based on SQL Server. We do have a few cloud and Azure things, some other platform things, but really we're focusing now on people that want to build applications on top of SQL Server. And so we've got customers that are all over the world. Most of the Fortune 1000, I think, use our tools. People that use our tools usually love them, and we're always trying to make them a little bit better, give you a little more options. And then Redgate really believes in giving back to the community and trying to help educate you. That was my philosophy at SQL Server Central. Is I wanted to build something that would have helped me when I was growing my career, and so I've tried to do that. And Redgate has allowed me to continue that when they purchased SQL Server Central. And then Redgate also has Simple Talk, where we publish a lot of technical articles that should help you improve your career. All right. So what are the challenges of ALM or DLM?
Hey, Steve.
Yeah.
I should put off the first poll right there.
Oh yeah. Go ahead and do that. I'm talking too much. Go do that while I drink.
Its question is, how many? Not how many. Which Redgate tools do you have? And obviously, you can select any or all that apply. I'll leave this open for a minute. See people voting.
There we go. Rodney, I wasn't avoiding you. You didn't come to Cambridge, and Neil did, so that's why we saw Neil.
Yeah.
A very wet Neil walking through the rain. So.
Yeah, he was soaked. Okay, the voting seems to have slowed down a whole bunch, so.
All right, looks good. All right.
So most people have got compare, which is not a shock at all. A lot of people have monitor or test or prompt. Not that many are looking at DLM yet. Okay, cool. That's actually great. So hide that and get back to you.
All right, so let's go. So some of you may have an ALM process for your application where you try to ensure that as your application flows from development to production, it goes smoothly. Some of you may not, but we really want you to do that with your databases as well. And the real challenges with databases are tables. You know, when you have a new version of your exe or your DLL in .NET, or you have a jar file in Java or a module in Python, or your ASPX or whatever files in your web application, we can stomp down a new version on top of the old one, or take the old version, stomp it on a new one, and we don't have to worry about anything. And we can certainly do that with views and stored procedures and functions and assemblies and other things in SQL Server as well. But tables have a special problem because we have to maintain that state. As we alter and change tables, we can't get rid of that data. If we could drop a table and put a new one down and move forward, our life would be really easy. But with tables, we've got to be careful there. And so when we're not careful, we have all kinds of problems. And these are challenges I've had throughout my career in different places. I'm sure some of you experience one or more of these as well, where we don't necessarily coordinate database and application development very well. And certainly that is still a challenge in trying to do that. We don't really have an easy way to tell what version or state our tables are other than right now. Typically, most people have the version of the database in production and the version in development, and they don't have any way to kind of track what's happening in intermediate versions, or go back to previous versions, or really manage things in an easy fashion. There's always ways to do this, but we want to make it smooth and easy, because doing things like rolling back, like coordinating changes, that's not creative work. That's pretty mundane, easy stuff, and we don't want to pay you to do that work. We want tools to do that kind of work. We also want you to be comfortable with releases, because typically for database releases, DBAs are nervous. They don't want things to go down. They want the database to be unavailable. Certainly we don't want things to break, and that means we tend not to release very often, and that's a problem for the business, because if we have a security issue, or we have a feature that needs to work, we need to be able to release right away. And so the agility in trying to implement ALM or DLM process is not that you want to be Facebook and release every hour, or you want to release every day, but you want to release when you need to release. That's kind of the important thing there. And the more we have manual processes, the more we make mistakes. I'm sure all of you have seen that at some point in time. I know I've made plenty of mistakes in my career that could have been avoided, because I'll make the mistake in dev, or I'll make it in test, and then I'll make it again in production, because I'm not doing all that stuff at the same time. So even though I've learned, I'll forget. I'm not reliable and I'm not repeatable, unlike a computer. So moving to continuous integration, continuous delivery, moving to a DLM type process is trying to give us repeatability and reliability. That's really the fundamental idea behind all these processes. A lot of people talk about DevOps as well, and that's really all about ensuring that we all are aware of what's going on, we're all communicating and working together, and then we can smoothly move changes from development to production. There is a speed element to this as well, but it's not that you want to release faster in terms of your pace, right, or your quantity, but you want to be able to release every week if you want to release every week, or every month if you need to release every month. Our customers, our competition, they're all making changes to their applications, and we want to be able to respond on our schedule, and that's what DLM and continuous delivery try to do for the database. They want to make sure that we can have a smooth, reliable process that we have confidence in to move changes from development to production. I forget which way you're seeing it, but for me it's development on the left to production on the right. And then we also want to make sure we test. For those of you who are early, Grant and I were talking about the SSMS releases and how they're having a few regressions as they release in different areas each time they update every month. And, really automated testing, the more you implement automated testing, you want to cover up and prevent those regressions or prevent changes from breaking things. So we want to do that in the database as well. Certainly application developers have been doing this for years, and many, well, not many, maybe some of them are much further ahead of us, but we want to do this in the database as well. There's a state of DevOps report that they do every year, and they're always trying to look at how enterprises and small companies and everybody in between works with IT, and how they can easily move changes through their software. It doesn't matter if you're selling software, if it's just line of business applications, departmental stuff, enterprise grade things that help your business function. and typically what they find is the companies that do really, really well, that have a lot of confidence in their IT, they can respond to changes, they have less issues, they are more agile, and they're using these continuous integration, continuous delivery, continuous deployment type processes to deploy code more frequently with less problems than other groups. And they tend to be more profitable as well, just because they can respond when needed. Again, it's not about releasing every day, but it's about responding when you want to respond. So what can Redgate do for you? And this is kind of why we do these every month, is we want to show you that we can do this with a variety of different tools and help you move along. So on the screen, what I put up is we have this kind of software development pipeline. This is kind of the ideal. And we've kind of built this for databases, but the same thing would apply for application developers. You can imagine that I have application developers on the left as well, and I'm releasing not to databases, but to application servers or clients or anything else, mobile devices, that kind of thing. And what I've got is, Redgate tools are listed in the middle, where they fit into this process, and then the various other platforms and products that you might use to solve these things. So if I focus on the development area, really what we want is our developers working with a version control system or source control system of some sort. If you look down at the bottom, you can see that we support all different kinds, TFS, VC, Git, Subversion, Mercurial, Vault, Perforce, CVS, really SourceSafe, anything. We will support any type of VCS that you want to use. And we do that with SQL Source Control primarily, but SQL Test and SQL Prompt also allow you to develop in a smooth fashion, get all your code into that version control system, and do your unit testing as a developer, do your smooth development, all that kind of stuff. And really what we're trying to do is get your head of your source control, or the most recent version of all your objects, into version control as a create statement, so that if you ever look at version control, you can see like the full definition of a table, right? You don't see the alter, you see the full definition of the table. You don't have to look in multiple places, and that's what our products do. But we also want you to implement continuous integration as well. And so the idea with continuous integration, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is that every time we check something in to our version control system, there's a trigger that goes through our code and builds it up and tests it and tries to make sure that it meets some standard, whatever that is for our organization. And again, we'll plug into TFS Build or TeamCity or Jenkins or Bamboo or Cruise Control or Go, or really anything that you want to use, we can plug into any build system. And then as you move further in your system, you can deploy to testing and QA and user acceptance and beta and staging, and then you'll go to production and maybe training environments and disaster recovery and other environments. We want to make that a smooth process as well, so that we're kind of practicing this deployment over and over and over again, so that we have some confidence when we get to our production environments where our end users will see it, that we can actually deploy these changes without an issue as quickly as possible. Now, there's no magic. All we're trying to do with all of our tools, with the DLM Automation suite, with all of the development tools, is that we are doing the same things you would do manually, but we're just trying to wrap it in a little bit of process. We're trying to make it easy for you to do this without manual work, trying to fix scripts or do other things. You still have to write the code. We depend on you to do that, but we're trying to make it a smooth process, so that my deployment to testing and my deployment to staging is exactly the same as my deployment to production. And the way we typically do that is we use release management tools like Visual Studio Release Management or Bamboo or Octopus Deploy, or really there's other ones too, but those are the main ones. We want to send our code into these tools, have some sort of script that deploys it the same way, so that we're confident we can deploy. And then of course we want to monitor our code afterwards, right? We want to make sure that we haven't broken performance, that we haven't substantially changed the way things work, that we're confident that what we thought we were deploying is what we deployed. And so Redgate provides operational tools like SQL Monitor, DLM Dashboard, and SQL Backup that help you monitor in operations and then feedback to developers how things are working. And the idea is that even though this looks like a line from left to right, we want it to go in a circle as quickly as possible. All right. The last thing too is our DLM Automation takes care of changing all that version control stuff from the create statements to the alters as needed. All right. So let's look at a demo. I don't think we don't have any questions yet, right? Looking good? All right.
Yeah, no questions so far.
So let's start with our databases. So over here, I've got a number of databases that I'm kind of highlighting. and it'll come up in a second if it's not on your screen, but I've got these SQL Server Central databases, and I'm simulating a number of different instances and environments here. So I've got development, and integration, and production, testing, and user acceptance, and acceptance, and these different environments that I might flow through. Some of you may have hopefully at least 2 environments, and you're not developing in production. Really, I'd prefer you at least have 3 environments, and I think Grant's had up to like 6 or 7 environments at a time. And then I met somebody, I had like 9 environments they had to deploy code through. But I'm working with these databases all in this instance just to make it simpler to look at. But they really are me going from development to these other environments. And the flow will be development to integration. And from integration, we would go to testing, and then we go to acceptance, and then we go to production. And that's how we'll flow. So in development, I have various objects. You know, I've got tables, views, store procedures, and things. And I think I've got, if I look at, I'm in my development database here. I've got a number of feeds here. I've got different objects and things. So I want to be able to make changes. So for example, let's leave that there and say I want to insert into our feeds. And we'll say Broncos win, because that happened this week. It's always a good week. We'll do 1, 1. If I were to make this change, I've changed my data, right? And this is kind of a lookup data that I would use to, you know, populate a form on a web Windows form application or on a web page or something else. It's kind of lookup data that I want to take care of. I want to leave that open. I could also do things like let's create a table, and we'll say call it Broncos. That's my theme this week. 2 and 0. I can make a new table. You know, I can alter something. Actually, I'll hold off from there. I can do all of this stuff, right? So I'm changing my schema here. So if I were to look here, we now see there's a new Broncos table here. This doesn't exist in my other environment. So in my integration environment, there's no Broncos table here. And in my testing environment, there's no Broncos table here, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go through all the environments, but that's essentially what I'm doing. Now, as I make these changes, I want to commit this data and this DDL to my version control system. And so the easy way to do that is with SQL Source Control. So I've got SQL Source Control listed here, and you'll notice it's actually pulled up the changes that I just made. So I've got a new table here at the bottom, and what we see is in my database, here's the table, and then in version control, there's nothing there, right? It's doing a comparison of some sort here. It's happening. If I were to look at my data change, the same thing. There's the new feed that I added, and in my version control system, there's nothing equivalent. And down here, there's nothing in this middle part, which signifies that things are identical. This is kind of a standard software development thing. It tells me I've got changes on the left that need to go to the right. I'll show you some differences and other things later as we move through here. Now, in this case, today we've decided we're going to use TFS. So I've got my TFS system here, my server, and my folder. And that corresponds, in fact, to, here's my local TFS server here. And if you were looking at that, I've got my database and my scripts. Oops, I didn't want to go to assemblies. My scripts here, and if I were to look at my tables, there's no Broncos table here, right? They're listed alphabetically right now by sort of name. So what I want to do is I'm going to commit these changes over to my version control system, and I'll do that very quickly by coming over here to my commit tab. That's refreshing. I'll say new changes for demo. It's not a great comment, but good enough for us. Once this is committed, I should in fact see my code here. Let's refresh this. And there's my Broncos table, right? It's committed now. One thing I like about TFS, the 2015 version, this is the same as what's in visualstudio.com, Visual Studio Online. It doesn't just give me this date. It actually kind of responds, and like you can see here, it says less than a minute ago. And so for things that are recent, that are happening soon, it kind of lets me know what's going on. I can easily see what's going on. Certainly I can sort by changes and see what's going on as well, right? I've done a few practice demos. So, Grant, do you want to run that poll on version control systems while we're waiting here?
Absolutely.
So we're not going to ask you if you use version control systems, because I'll probably be sorely disappointed that many of you do not. However, you should use a version control system. I think software application developers they've been using for years. We need to get more DBAs involved in understanding this. And whether you're a developer or you're a production person, all your changes should be stored in a version control system just so you can keep track of them. Right? Then we always know something's changed.
Yeah, it's all about the ability to undo.
Yeah, or figure out what you broke, right? I mean, sometimes when we have complex changes and long stored procedures, it's difficult to figure out exactly what changed if you don't have that prior version. And once you compile that on SQL Server, you can't tell what was different.
Let me just share the results here because it's interesting. There's only 2% that said none, which is fantastic.
That is good.
And then it's Team Foundation Server, Subversion, and Git. Not surprised.
Yeah, it looks pretty good. And I expect, right, because this is a TFS-based demo, more of you using TFS. Right. So, like I said, this is exactly what you would see if you went to visualstudio.com, which is where I demo a lot. But this is just on my local machine here, the sales demo dev system up here. All right. So I've made some changes. They exist here in my development database, which would be my laptop or my desktop machine. I actually want to get them over to this integration environment, right, because I didn't have them here. And so part of what I want to do now is I need to kick off a build. I want to make sure that all that code works correctly, because I'm sure none of you would have ever done something like this, where you'd go new table, and you'd save that, and then you'd go, well, hey, I want to store this in version control, so I'll say this is a new table. Right? And I could certainly do that, store it in my file system and check it in. Now, I'm sure some of you would do something like this and go, well, really what I want to do is I want to change the name because it's better. And then you'll come up here and you'll click this lovely button that says save, because you'll go, that was a tiny change. It's not going to cause any problems. And what will happen if I try to compile this? Of course, it won't work, right? Because I would need to either qualify this identifier, or I need to remove the space and put an underscore or something else, right? One of the nice things about using a tool here is that it will check and tell me if I've done something incorrect when I've built this database. So we want to do a build. Now in this case, we're using TFS build. I could use, I said, a number of other systems, but I can do building here. And in my Team Foundation 2015 system, or in Visual Studio Online, I have a build option here. It's one of my tabs, essentially, that they've implemented. And so I've got a build system that runs. And in this case, you'll notice I've got a build definition over here. I can build my database, and I can build my application. And I have both of them available so that I can have those built separately when I make changes, or can I build one or the other as I've changed. And each one of these has their own definition. So if I look at this, the database build, you can see I've got a number of them here. I've actually got a definition here, and Visual Studio makes this really easy. So when I come in here, I typically have a blank build step, and I can come in here and look at the build list of build items. I mean, if I look at all, there's many more, but in the build area, I can build it for Android. I can use Ant or Make builds. I can use Maven, MS Build. I can do Visual Studio builds, anything I want to do, right? The build system just knows how to assemble software. In this case, I'm using Redgate products. And so my build task here, this first one that's highlighted, actually will take all of the code from version control, and it will recompile it on a new database. In this case, what it's actually doing is going to this scripts folder path. That's my code path in version control. It's going to build a package so that I know exactly what the state of my database is right now, all my code. Now this is the equivalent of, if I compiled all my code and produced an XE or DLL, I'd know what the state was from version control by having that artifact. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm actually building on local DB here, and then there's other options I can do as well, but that's what I'm doing. I'm also doing a test step here where I'm actually going to run automated tests. And in our case, we use T-SQL-T primarily, though I could use another step and run, DB test or T-SQL unit or the Microsoft unit and that kind of thing. Then I'm going to do, a few other things. I publish the test results. I keep my artifacts together. Here I'm going to publish that package. I just have all of these running in order, and including I have a PowerShell step here. It's actually going to run this PowerShell command, which would update my DLM dashboard. So I can kind of pick and choose what I want to happen in my build, and I have things running. In this case, if I look at my builds, you'll see that this first build ran 5 minutes ago. This ran when I checked in that code. And in fact, if I were to check in this other code, let's come over here. I've got that new table. Again, this is a bad comment, but I'm trying to just go a little quickly here and not make too many mistakes. Oops. What we'll find is I have a new build queued here right now, less than a minute ago. Build 108 here. And this happened as soon as I committed that to TFS. It recognizes that there's a change in version control and it produces another build. And so 108 will appear here when it's done. And in fact, if I wanted to look at 108, I could see what's going on. TFS has the ability to run agents, and so here's the agent output that's running on this machine. When I use Visual Studio Online or visualstudio.com, I have an agent that I download to one of the servers here at my house, and so I can make changes on the road and it will build the software here at my house and tell me if something's broken. And I can actually watch the agent here and see what's going on as I'm going through these changes. And so we can, if I scroll through this list, you can see that each task appears here. They're also listed up here. The build task will actually invoke SQL compare. It will get all of my object code here and assemble it. You know, my test task will do a similar thing, and then it will run the tests that I've got stored into my database. Let me come down here. It will run all the unit tests because that's how it's configured, and then it will go through all the rest of the steps, publish all those steps. And so what you've seen me so far is that I've made changes to a table, or I've added a new table, and I've made data changes. And so ideally, if that had happened, what we'd see, I hope, is that my changes had moved. Did I pick the wrong database? We published the package. Let's see what's going on. It should have. That worked. That worked. Should have. I know what's going on. It did deploy. It's not set to deploy. My fault. It's not set to deploy yet. It's just building the package. It's got all the artifacts ready. Sometimes we have it configured to automatically deploy the integration. Sometimes we don't. And so I've got these changes staged up. All right, so I've gotten changes in the version control from my development environment. I've actually done a build here, and I've run tests, and everything's green, so I have no errors. The next step is really I want to deploy these things. Now, TFS does include a release system as well. We're not demoing that today. It has the ability to do these releases. Instead, today, as part of my build, and let's just look at that build definition again. What we're actually doing is on the last step, I have a command line step that's calling octo.exe, which is the Octopus deploy command line. And so it's creating a release and has the various arguments that we need to do that. And when I come over here to my Octopus deploy system, what we'll actually see is it's created a new release. Now I did this one earlier. 84 was my first set of changes. 85 is my next set of changes. And if I were to look at what this involves, right now I don't have any artifacts, nothing's happening, but I can deploy this to integration. Let me just deploy this once so we can see what's going on. And what this will do is it will take the output of my build and it will actually deploy it to my database. And you can see it's running through these steps. When I look at the process, what we see is it's going to get my NuGet package for all these environments. In acceptance, it would refresh from production, but we're not doing that. It will then create the database release. In acceptance, it will actually ask for an update, and then it will deploy those changes. And so while that's running, Grant, do you want to run a release management poll?
Yeah, absolutely. Hang on one second. They've got it as a you want to do release management or CI?
Oh, do the CI. I forgot to do the CI one. Let's do CI.
Okay.
I completely forgot.
Continuous integration. Which ones do you use, if any?
Yeah. While you guys are answering, I'm actually going to kick off the deploy to testing too for that build. All right, what questions we have? Let's see. The data edit. So the data edit that I made, when the poll's done, I'll show you the data edit I did.
1 second. Still a couple more votes coming in. Okay, it looks frozen.
Yeah.
None is almost winning, but TFS, large number for Jenkins too, and then some other.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's fine. I mean, it doesn't really matter what...
Oh, no, I'm not being critical. I'm just... It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, Jenkins makes sense, right? It's free. A lot of people like that. Let's do this. All right, so who asked the question? Somebody asked the question. The data edit. This was the data edit I made. We'll actually change this code here. And I can actually see that. Maybe the best way to do that is come here and look at what I, in fact, did. And the data item, this was 12 minutes ago, and the change that I made was this one at the top. You can see what I did here. And if I wanted to compare it, I could go through it, but I don't want to go through that whole thing. This is the data edit. Let me make another data edit just to show you a couple things, and then let's also, in my shared database, let me change the store procedure, and we'll kick off another build while we're running. So let's just edit this one. Same kind of thing you guys always do. I'm sure lots of you want to do this stuff. You edit stuff. Oh, we don't want to do that. You'll change code as you. I didn't want to do it there, did I? Let's go back to here so that you believe me because I'm in the wrong environment. Let's go back to development and let's say this. That changes in. I'm in the wrong environment. I keep doing it. Let's do this. Let's go back. All right, there we go. Let's get rid of this.
There's this thing called tab coloring that's provided by SQL Prompt that you might want to try out.
Yeah, it's reminding me that you'll notice this is green because it's in this environment. Let me make a new query. If I go to integration, it's purple, right? And we can actually see there's the old Broncos win that I had there that I changed somewhere over here. And now let's do this. Let's remove a couple of these. All right, there's a development change. So I've changed a couple of different things here. And I just want to show these as I'm going along. I'm just making a couple changes, and they'll just continue to kick off builds. You'll notice here highlighted that I've changed the value of the data as well. We'll commit those. But now in this integration environment, hopefully everything looks good. I have that Broncos table, and I have that Broncos data change. And those come because I deployed this release to my integration and testing while we were doing that. And the actual script that's run is here. And you can see in this case it deployed that table I made. This was a change I made earlier when I was testing. I hadn't deployed it. And then my data change is here. But having this work automatically, I didn't have to go through and build my own script. It happened automatically. And in fact, if I go back to releases, we'll see I've got other releases, right? Here's one that I made earlier just now. Here's another one that's still created, right? And these are being created by that build process that continues to build. And so when we look at our build process, it continues to run. We built 6 earlier. We're now up to 9 has built. Yep, nothing's queued. So 9 is built, and that's continued to pull releases in here. And when I go, let me come back to here, I can see it better. Octopus Deploy gives me this great console, lets me see what I've actually done, what's created, and what's going to move out. So and I don't have to do these in order. Like I don't have to fill these in. I can just pick the latest one and say, let me deploy that now. And so this will actually produce that package and allow me to see what changes I've made and what's actually going to be redeployed. And again, it's this scripted process that I built that runs the same way every time. Now, this is what I would have to do manually, right? Certainly, I could look at version control, right? This whole, let's come over here. This whole part is me looking at version control grabbing the latest set of code, figuring out what's not in production, and then sending it to production, then building a script. That's what all of this is doing. I would have to do that manually. And then down here, this part is running that script on whatever machine I'm running on, okay? All Octopus allows me to do, or any release management software allows me to do, is automate the manual process that I have. And certainly I could build some of this manually and do some of this automatically, or however I want to do it. The point is I want it to be repeatable, right? And over time, as I get better at this, I'll have all the things that need to happen. Maybe I need to suspend replication. Maybe I need to, pause an AG. Maybe, I need to go update some other system to say the deployment's happening, or I need to quiesce a web server. Anything I want to do, I can do it here. But this process allows me to be sure that all the steps that are required in my environment always happen. So let's run that release management poll. I've got some different deployments here. Let me deploy this one.
Okay. Coming up.
So while you guys are running the poll, I actually started a deployment to my acceptance environment too, because we'll get something different there. All right, so lots of nones. That's fine. I think release management is the hardest. In some ways, it's the easiest. In some ways, it's the hardest. Yeah.
Release management's a big step.
Yeah.
I think everybody should be running CI. I mean, there's just no reason not to. But
yeah, release management gets scary.
Yeah, very.
But really, what I suggest is, script your process in here, and then make everything have a manual stop, so that you just make sure it's running what you want to run.
So there's the result. It's 62% none, and then a few Octopus deploy, other Bamboo. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, cool.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're back here. You can see, I've deployed that 86 to my integration environment. So if I were to go look at my integration environment, let's see if I can do this without messing everything up. Here was the old My Broncos win here. If I run this again, the data changes moved through. I think all my table changes, right? Because I had the 99 Broncos here. My store procedure, let's look at that. That's been changed from that star that I kept leaving there. I don't know what other changes I had there. These same changes went to my test environment. Well, some of them went because my Broncos table is here, but my MyTest99 table is not there. Why is that not there? Well, because I didn't deploy this release over there. I deployed this release, which had my last data change, store procedure change, I think something else. I think I'm missing an 85 release here. Maybe I didn't create one. I don't know, but I didn't have all these changes going through here. My other changes went through, right? And I can continue to deploy these through. In fact, I can skip environments, so let's skip that environment. We'll put that in there now. And it's going to pause just like my other release. And the reason it's paused when I look here is because in this acceptance environment, we've added the step that says we want a manual review of what's going on here, because this is really the last step before I go to production. So I might let developers always deploy to integration so that they can see everybody's code together. I might let QA people always deploy to test so they can constantly update as needed, for their own workflow. But because when it goes to production, I want somebody to look at it. So what I can do is pick this up as a DBA, and I can certainly do all the security, configure who gets to see things and whatnot. But I can pick this up. I can look at that script that's going to run and make sure that I'm comfortable with it. In this case, I can say, all right, well, I'm creating two tables here. I'm creating a proc. What else am I doing? I'm going to change some things here, right? Add some data. Good. And then I'll say proceed. And this will actually then continue to deploy, because this will take those changes and move them through, even while I still have another change, another deployment set up here and staged. And again, this one's paused as well. So once this deployment finishes, hopefully quickly, I should be able to come up into my acceptance environment, and I should see those changes. So let's go up here and look. So I don't have those changes yet. Nope, they are. They've appeared there. And let's come up here, and now my light blue has that old change. It doesn't have that second data change yet because I haven't deployed that. Okay, this has happened. I can certainly promote this to production. Nice thing about Octopus, it does a great job of, I'm not going to review this again, kind of giving me some options here. So as it runs through here, it will let me know where I can move from here. So here should we see that second data change, and if I do this a few times, we should see that last feed change to Broncos 2-0 here in a minute. Do we have any great questions while I'm waiting here, Grant?
There really hasn't been any questions come up. There's only the one, was there an option to not deploy data, and I answered that one already, because it's customizable. You get to pick and choose which ones you want to deploy data for.
Right. You know, we can always kind of, go through there and alter things as needed, and certainly because we can see the script, we can edit that if needed.
If anyone does have questions, please open up a little question window and type them in there. This is that's what we're here for.
Failed.
Try to help out.
Oh, I think I have to redeploy this again. Let's try it again, because I think because I had those two deployments in process. This is one of those nice things when I look at this. So I can see this deployment failed, and I can see why, right? At the top level, one or more steps failed, and then as I scroll down, I can see, well, why did this fail? So this is one of those great things that Redgate does, is it does a schema update check. And so this is one reason they package that. It knows that I built a upgrade script to go from version A to version B. And so if version B has changed, for example, if I've made changes in production, potentially my deployment won't work now because somebody's already updated something. So we do a step here to kind of stop and check and see if there's a problem there. In this case, it's stop paused again. Yes. Let's look at that again. Let's go. So hopefully this one will go this time, because I think because I was deploying to the same environment 2 different times, it was expecting there to be some different changes there. Now, I'm doing this in Octopus Deploy. We actually have this set in parallel. I could do this in TFS release. So a lot of you use TFS. In this case, I've got a pipeline here. And what does it do? Well, it actually goes and looks for that database package. In this case, it's looking on a certain path, based on how my CI system produced that package, and then it's going to do the deployment here. And these are plugins that we have. Oops, sorry. These are plugins we have for this process to do this, but they also are really just wrappers around PowerShell commandlets that we have in place. And again, if I had other things that I wanted to do, for example, if I was copying this stuff to Azure, I could do that. I could execute PowerShell on another machine. There's a variety of things I could do, and there's tons of plugins in the Visual Studio Marketplace. So you could go to the extension place and you could look for extensions in the marketplace. Because this is local TFS, I would have to actually go get those from the web. In visualstudio.com or TFS Online, I would actually have a huge list of hundreds and hundreds of potential deployments. In this case, my deployment succeeded the second time around. So when I look at this, it actually worked. You'll notice I skipped an environment here, and I broke something here, so let's reconnect. There we go. My data feed is there. All right.
Okay, there are good questions now.
All right, let's take some questions.
All right, so the first one, Robert Muir asks, he has a shared database on a central server for developers, and how does that affect deployment?
So there's really no difference, right? I've got this development database here, but it could be shared. I mean, it's just a SQL Server database. Everybody could connect to it. You'll notice as I made changes, these little blue blobs appeared. So what this does is it triggers and lets me know there's a change. I don't know why this is. I think because I'm going too fast. This one T-SQL-T item keeps popping up. Let me just see. Yeah. I think the T-SQL-T framework is actually changing something here, because I've seen this come up a few times. But, if I were to alter a table, so let me go back and find the right database. Let's do, what will I not kill? Let's do this. I know that's not a great column, right? I could be making changes, and certainly these changes could be made by other people as well. I could continue to alter stuff if I wanted to do this. But what really happens once I do this, let's see if this refreshes a bit. If I get my blue blobs are on there's a polling timer. It should appear in a minute, but what should start happening is I should start to see blobs that let me know that I've made changes here. And so, was I making those in the right database? I thought I was. Maybe I wasn't. Ooh, Grant, you're supposed to watch me.
I'm supposed to be watching you.
See if I made this here. Let's come in here. Let's make it. Oh, am I not in the shared database? Hold on. No, I'm in the shared database. Why don't I see my procedure I created? So that should have been made in the SQL Server Central shared, which is where, oh, I'm in the wrong, duh. Sorry, I'm an idiot. It helps to work in the right database. There we go, there's my procedures. All right, so I'm not crazy. There's too many databases here. In a shared database, you would make all these changes, and what I would see is I could see my changes, right, which are these ones that I've made, but if I had made those from another instance of Management Studio or another person had made them, I would still see them here, right, because it's a shared database. So as I click refresh, I would see, Robert's table or John's table or whoever's table appear here as well. And then the same thing would happen when I do this commit. One of the things we do when I come here is that in this area, what we usually have is, this text, right? It says some of these changes may not be made by you if we detect that they're not all made by you. And we can detect who made the changes here. So in this case, because it's me, what you would see is I would see my changes, and then I would see Robert's changes and John's changes and Sarah's changes and everybody else. And I could pick and choose what I'm going to commit and not commit. So, here I'm committing 2 objects, right? I could commit 3, whatever I want to do. Certainly if some of these were related, maybe I say, changes related to, and I could put in a work item number here. I don't know where I have a UK keyboard, so I don't know where my pound sign is, but I could relate these to a work item in TFS. In TFS, for those of you that are familiar, which is most of you, I can have these work items, right? So if I were to go, to work, I could have all these items, and each one of these items has a number, right? And so I could link to bug 1 in version control so that I know what I'm doing. And I could commit these to in a shared environment, and then, of course, I would still see other changes there as well, but maybe that's up for Robert or somebody else to commit. And if they committed them from their instance of SSMS, then they would have those changes, and each of those would kick off a build. Let's come here. So I should have, in fact, 2 builds queued here now, and 1 up here in a minute. I think this only queues 1 at a time. Visual Studio Online lets me see 2. I should see 2. We'll see. But in a shared database environment, everything's the same. Now, maybe you don't have that integration environment. Maybe you do in a shared environment because the code should be the same, right? Because it's a shared database for development, shared database for integration. The code is the same once it's deployed, but maybe you have more data and integration. But really, everything's the same. What else?
Okay, so the other question is going to be a little bit harder to answer. These people do not deploy to production, and instead they want to take a database from a customer. That's right. A simple way to take a database from a customer and generate a deployment package to bring it to a given release.
Does that mean like you have a backup of their database or you have a schema backup?
Yeah, well, that's just it. He doesn't say if they've got backups or what. There's got to be...
the easy way to do it is to tell your customer to buy SQL Compare. And they go and they say, I need to grab my production database, and I'm going to create a snapshot. My snapshot, September 2016. And they create this snapshot file, right? And they create it, and they export their schema to you, and then you restore that somewhere, and then what we would do is you would create this deployment package, as part of this whole process here is this, you would script this to be looking at that snapshot or that backup from the customer, and then you would create the package based on that. And so what in essence is, even though you're not doing deployment, you would fake this so that I would say, let me close these. So I would say my production environment here, this database, is the schema backup from my customer, right? And I could have multiple ones of those if I wanted to. And then in this process that I have here, right, I could, this refresh from production step, I could have this restore that backup or build the database from their schema, and then still create the release in the script. And then rather than doing this part, right, I could have an email step or a file copy step that drops this script onto some other location, someplace on my drive that says send to customer A, and have the script appear here, and then I just email them the script. I mean, it's really not hard to do this stuff, right? You just, all I'm trying to do is automate the stuff that you do manually. So in the manual step, what would you do? You would do that same thing, right? I would compare their schema with, what I have in development or what I have in integration. I would produce a package, I would check it, and then I would email it to them. And that's what we'll do here. And I could have it email too. I mean, I could add a step here that says, call smtp.exe or whatever and shoot something off to somebody. Does that make sense? Whoever asked the question? Let me see if I look at these.
Sorry, I was typing.
Yeah, no problem.
They have a backup from the customer, so they could work off of that. The other question that came up was, this is great for internal environments, how to deal with deployments at clients who have different versions. I already typed up one answer to it and recommended Ready Roll as an approach there.
Yeah, Ready Roll could work. I mean, the thing, if you want to use this approach, right, what you would do is this NuGet package that we get is produced by this build. Let me look at this build. So we publish this package, and so this is actually going to this feed, and I think I can visualize it here. It doesn't have, it's not a valid rendering feed, but excuse me, it's producing a package that's just read, right? And these are copied. Well, it's pulling off the feed. But I could just produce this package, right? And this package looks like the current state of version control. That's really what exists. Now, all of this stuff that's running here, so create this release, this plugin is really wrapping a PowerShell command. So if I went to documentation.redgate.com and DLM Automation, that's not what I need. Sorry, give me a second. These are all the commandlets. That plugin to Octopus deploy or to TFS build or TFS release, they all run this stuff. So what I can do is I could send this to customers. I mean, I don't know the licensing cost thing, so please don't ask me these questions. But a customer could take my package, and there could be a series of scripts on their end that create a database release. They do a new database release, a new package. They validate their scripts. Where's validate? Invoke schema validation, and then import, publish the package. We'll send it out to the database themselves, and so you could deploy this to multiple clients. You say, so we've got this one version, and then the client side would use the same process you're using essentially to generate the custom script for that particular database. Now, the more customers are ahead or behind or differentiating, the more complex that can be. You could have errors, right? If they're way behind your deployment process. But if you're sending them scripts, you could certainly do it this way. Or, as Grant said, ready roll is a great way of doing it too. Slightly different development paradigm, but they both work great. All right.
You got 5 minutes left.
5 minutes left. So,
yep.
Is there anything else? This thing scrolls weird. That question thing. Could it be customized rules during development? Yeah, I mean, you could have some of that stuff. We try to have things fairly simple, right? There are options in SQL Source Control, that because it's using SQL Compare, you can set options in how SQL Compare works. Certainly, sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but my mind is jumping around. Here, when I'm doing this, there's this item. So if there's SQL Compare parameters you want, we can do that. If you want things set differently, like you want ANSI nulls on for one object and not another one, though I'm not sure why you would do that, I suspect you could do it. I've never tried that though. Grant, have you ever seen anybody do something like that?
Not ANSI nulls. I've seen people change the what do you call it, the character set per table.
Oh yeah. If you wanted the collation, but that would exist,
Yeah, I've seen the collation change per column. So, but that's built into the definition. So I'm not.
Yeah. So if I wanted to do, here, add my new great column. I don't know if I have this column there, but I could say, I don't know, SQL, right? I could. Jesus, I can't even think of what a column is, but I could add the column, the collation here, and that gets picked up by SQL Compare, and that gets deployed separately. I guess it would depend. Really, I'd say you should send us a note to support or sales and say either sales@redgate.com or support@redgate.com and say, I want to do this specific change for deployment, because chances are you can, because this is all scriptable. My build is scriptable, my release is scriptable. This process, I can just add steps if I want, right? I mean, send an email, run a script, do whatever I want here. So I can add any step I want, reorder them in here however I need to, and then apply them to environments. I would think you could deploy almost anything you want to deploy there. So, all right, I know I'm running low on time. Let me jump back over here. So hopefully give you an idea of how this can work. Even with a couple issues in the middle there, but it actually is a fairly smooth process once you've built it. It does take time. I'm not going to try to say that you could buy the DLM suite and tool belts and set this up next week. I mean, I could, right? But I've done it a bunch of times. We could set it up in your environment, but it takes some time for your developers, your DBAs, your operations people to get comfortable with how it works, to figure out what items need to change for your particular environment, what order things go in, and to just trust the system. So, what I would urge, if you want to try this, please, if you're a tool belt user, you've got the products already. If you're not, do evaluations, build a proof of concept. Take a one table, one row database and deploy it through your environment. Build a little proof of concept and practice. And once you get that done, you'll have a lot more confidence to take your existing applications. So if you need more information, it should be on the screen, DLM@redgate.com, or there's some links. We do have online training courses from some of our partners. You can check the schedule. One of our former sales engineers, Alex Yates, does some online courses, and then we have a few partners in the U.S. that do training specifically to help you smooth your database development process. And that's about it. Did I forget anything?
No, you got it all covered.
Excellent.
Nice job.
Thank you. We've recorded this, and so I think the young lady that does this says she's out of rest of the week, so next week sometime the recording will be available and the Q&A. All right.
Great. Well, thanks, Steve. Nice job.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody,
for coming out.
Yeah. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Talk to you soon.